Alright. Hey guys, so Engineer Truth here. So if this is your first time watching my videos, I'm a mechanical engineer major or graduate, but I do try to make these really simple videos to tell you basics of each major, and today it's going to be civil engineering. So let's get right into it. Alright, so here we have the curriculum from UCLA's website. This is a roadmap. So right away I can tell you that it looks pretty similar. The first 2 years look pretty similar to any other engineering. And for the most part, I think after your first or second year, if you decide to switch out of civil engineering, you can to mechanical or aerospace and not lose too many units. That's a pretty simple switch. But again, after your junior year, which really gets into the heavy parts of civil engineering, you're probably not going to be able to switch majors. You might be able to switch majors depending on your school, but you're going to lose a lot of units. So pretty much the first and second year look really similar to mechanical or aerospace. You just take like a year of chemistry, a year of physics. No, I mean one class of chemistry, a year of physics, and a year of math, and then you start getting into like really basic classes like deformables, which is mechanics of deformables is basically studying like very basics like shear stress, like how a beam would bend, stuff like that, and then but what really separates civil engineers is that they have an emphasis on studying soil and like a bit of, I guess you could say, geology, but more like how the ground works, which is obviously really important for civil engineers, and a lot of structural analysis, just basically putting numbers to the way structures behave. Like say if you have a certain beam, if it's a cylinder, it'll behave in a certain way. If it's like a square shaped beam, then it's going to behave in a different way, and different equations need to be applied for different ways. And different places you put forces and all that stuff. So that's where civil engineers really specialize in. And for this particular civil engineering program, your senior year is pretty much all electives. It's not just like random classes. They're all, of course, like upper division civil engineering classes, but they probably do this so that students can specialize in whatever they want to specialize in. But you only see this at larger civil engineering schools. If you go to a smaller civil engineering school, they probably don't have enough students to have all these electives. They probably just have like probably like a straight curriculum roadmap where every class is defined for you. So anyhow, let's go to the wages. I don't know, $40 an hour as the mean, which is really good. It's about the average for engineering. So obviously, you know, it's pretty good pay, man. You're not gonna be hungry. Let's say you're not gonna be hungry if you work as a civil engineer, and you're gonna be able to pay for a good amount of stuff. We look at the distribution of jobs, and if you look at my biomedical engineering video, you notice that only certain places had biomedical engineering jobs, and that's because it's a very specialized field. It's a growing field. It's pretty new, and also if you make a product like a biomedical engineering product, you just ship it somewhere else. You don't have to like make it everywhere, right? But with civil engineering, we notice the distribution is a lot more even. You know, of course, we have California and Texas and Florida with a high concentration, but you know that's because there's more buildings and more people in those states in general. But overall, that's one of the perks of working as a civil engineer, is that you could probably get a job anywhere you like. Okay, so next thing I really want to talk about is where the industries are, right? And this is really important. Yes, this is probably the best tip I give to civil engineers, is that there's a good amount of jobs that are private, but there's a pretty good amount of jobs that are also in the government, and also some of these jobs are government contractors, which means they're basically a private company, but they do work for the government, and that pretty much means you're a government employee, sort of. Okay, so I wanted to differentiate between working for the government and working for a private company, because it's really important. Okay, and when people get their first jobs out of college, they typically stay at the job for at least a year. You know, typically I see people stay at the job. Some people get their first job and they stay in for the whole career, right? And some people stay for at least, you know, about 5 to 10 years. So it's important to know the distinction of working for the government or working for a private company, because when you put all that effort to get a job, go through background check, go through the drug test, you know, of course you got to interview, maybe 3 rounds of interviews. I want you to choose a company that's right for you. So with working for the government, it has its perks, such as the starting pay is usually higher, the benefits are usually better, you typically won't be forced to work overtime, and it's pretty stable. I would say it's more stable than working for a private company. It's known to be stable, like the Department of Water and Power. It's a very stable it's a very stable place to work. But the downside is that it tends to be a bit more routine. There's a lot of paperwork, and there's, I would say, in my opinion, I think working for the government is pretty boring. But then again, that's just my opinion. So, but again, there's a lot of it is just following procedures. That was what I'm trying to say. So as for working for a private company, again, you're gonna have a little bit lower pay, it's low starting pay than working for the government. You may have to work overtime, maybe put in a position where you have to work overtime. Sometimes you're paid for it, sometimes you're not. And then there's also a situation where it's not as stable as working for the government, but there is more room for creativity and innovation. And depending on what you're looking for, if you're a money-minded person, you might want to work for the government because maybe you have kids, you want to buy a house, then work for the government or a government contractor would be a good idea. But if you're more a person that wants to try new things, really learn your craft and be more creative in engineering, then private company is definitely where you want to go. So job outlook, about as fast as the average. Growing about as fast as the national average, which is really good. One reason I put this video off for so long is because when I made my first video about a year ago, civil engineerings were not doing too well. But honestly, I've seen a lot of my civil engineering friends get hired recently. So I think with the economy picking up, I definitely see a big improvement in the employment rate of civil engineers. So that's really good, So next thing I want to say is, how could you be a successful civil engineer? You have to compete in some kind of engineering competition. I personally recommend either the National Concrete Canoe Competition or the Steel Bridge Competition, which are both hosted by ASCE, which is American Society of Civil Engineers. So now here's the website for the canoe competition, and here's the one for Steel Bridge. And it's really important that you participate in these competitions as soon as possible. So say if you start as a freshman and you are a member of the team, then by the time you're senior, you could be the engineering lead on one of these projects or one of these competitions, one of these teams. And if you're the team engineer lead on one of these teams and your team wins, your team is wins a pretty high rank. It makes you look really, 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 really good, really good. Your potential to work anywhere, you really have a lot of spotlight on you because ASCE is huge and these competitions are really well known. So if you do well, if you're engineering lead, being engineering lead for any school on one of these competitions it looks really good already. But on top of that, if you win and beat other schools, it looks really, really good as well. So I would say this is not even optional. You have to compete in one of these two engineering competitions. Pick whatever one you're more interested in or whatever team you get along better with. Actually, it probably matters more whatever team you get along better with than what you're actually more interested in, because you're gonna have to be spending a lot of time with these guys working on this project. But one great thing about these projects or these competitions is that most of the time, all the materials are paid for by the school. All your tools are paid for by the school, and the school will usually pay for your traveling fees. I know my school did, and I went to Cal State Long Beach, which is just a state school, a state university, and they paid for our whole trip when I did my mechanical engineering competition. So most schools will pay for their students to go compete for them if you apply and stuff, go through the student government and stuff. So that's one thing that's pretty cool is you work on this bridge for a whole year, and then at the end of the year you and your team get to go on a free vacation together. Another thing that's really important is volunteering and community participation. And again, this is just through American Society of Civil Engineers. I would say this is not even optional. This is required because for me, I got my engineering internship from volunteering at the Society of Petroleum Engineers. And one great thing about volunteering is that you get to interact with people that are older, and that's really the network that matters, is networking with people that are working professionals that have been working for 10 years, because those are the people that can get you the interviews. Typically your friends won't be able to get you interviews. It's usually the older people. And when you volunteer, it just puts you in a situation where older professional sees you and you're on your good side. They're like, wow, this kid is like really, putting a lot of work and helping the community out, and really helping, outreach to high school students or something, and they see you in like in a good light, and so they're more likely to give you like an interview if they see you in like in a good light, as I say. Community participation also really important. I wish I knew about this when I was still in school. Basically, a committee is basically a group of people who volunteer, and usually it's working professionals, but students are welcome to be committee members on certain things too. And basically you meet like twice a month, like on video chat or maybe in person, depending on whatever you decide to committee for. And then you might read essays for a scholarship, or you might set up a conference for like all of ASCE. So these are really important because again, you get to actually like work a little bit with professionals, and again, a great way to get a job. I recommend doing both committee and volunteering starting freshman year, like right away. And same thing with these bridge competitions, right away. Get as much experience in these competitions as you can right away. It's really going to help you. Honestly, if you get a good GPA, like 3.5 or above, ideally like 3.7-ish, and you're engineering lead for one of these top, 10 schools, and you're involved with volunteering and committee participation, I guarantee you're going to get a job, a really good job. Like no doubt, there's no doubt. If you do all that, I guarantee you're going to get a good job, like 100% sure. So that's all I had to say for civil engineering. If you guys like this video, yeah, subscribe. Thanks.
My name is Richard. I work as a civil engineer. A typical day for me involves quite a bit of reading, codes and regulations. Project manager for a couple different projects, which mainly means doing a little research and getting information from clients, find out what their needs are. This is all as it pertains to civil engineering. Civil engineering, we do grading, drainage, utility work, some structural work. A lot of the things that you consider infrastructure, your roads, things like that, are done by civil engineers. I'm the discipline lead, which means that I manage the civil engineering department. So my work encompasses a little bit of all of that. My job, I work probably 50 hours a week on the average. It can be stressful at times, but it's probably no more stressful than any other job that you would take seriously. A PE is a professional engineer, which basically means that you're licensed. And to become a licensed engineer, you go to school for 4 to 5 years. Not many people graduate from engineering school in less than 5. It's pretty rare. But you'll go to school for about 5 years. You'll graduate. You'll work as an intern for 4 years. You'll take an EIT exam. Usually you do that your senior year. You'll take your EIT exam. You become an intern. You'll work for 4 years. Then you're eligible to take the PE exam. Some people take it several times. I'd say probably 2 or 3 times is probably the average number of times that people take it. So all in all, it takes probably 9 years or more to become an engineer from when you start, to become a professional engineer. You're still an engineer until you pass your exam. You're just considered an engineer intern. It's important to note that there's 2 different types of engineering schools. You have an engineering technology school, and you have an engineering school that's accredited by ABET, if you want to become a licensed engineer in a state and be able to stamp drawings, you need to attend an ABET accredited school. The technology schools, you learn a lot of the same things that you would learn in engineering school, but because they're not accredited, you will not be able to take the PE exam. Also, ABET is pushing toward a master's degree requirement, I understand, for future students that want to become PEs. I know it's in the works. I don't know what specific details are, but I think they're pretty serious about requiring masters for future engineers, and it does make quite a bit of sense. There's a lot to know. To make it through school, you have to be a little technical minded to begin with. You have to be pretty passionate about math and science, or at least have a great deal of tolerance for it, because you'll be fully immersed in both. That's probably the thing that weeds people out the most, math and science classes. You know, if you're good in math and that's what you love to do, you know, engineering might be for you, but you have to be able to get through some tough classes. You know, the kinds of classes that nobody's good at naturally. Nobody's naturally good at those classes. You have to work hard. That's what it takes. As an intern, you'll wind up doing a lot of things that you didn't learn in school necessarily that pertain to your trade. Things like drafting, and you do some menial stuff, but it's not too bad. It's more along the lines of what you'll be doing. But it's just the things that you don't learn in school. Generally, you'll specialize as a civil engineer. Whether you do it intentionally or not, it'll happen. Most civil engineers won't practice all different disciplines, which are, there's geotechnical engineering, which deals with soils. You have structural engineering. You have environmental engineering, water resources, and transportation. When you take your PE exam, you'll actually take a depth exam for one of those concentrations. And you'll naturally fall into one of those if you don't pursue it on purpose. It's difficult to learn all 5 disciplines really well. Plus, most businesses, I think, tend to concentrate on one or another. The best part about this job for me, I think, is knowing that I've worked very hard towards something that I feel very useful. My day is very rewarding. I feel that I've created something. Sometimes you get lost working in a drawing, and you forget about the scale. You know, you look at something that's very small, and you're actually designing something that's actually hundreds of acres. And it's very rewarding to see it built and know that you designed it. There's other perks, but for me, those are the big things. I left another career to do this, and those things mean a lot to me, to be able to create things and use most of them, if not all, my abilities. Worst parts about the job would be stress at times. Sometimes you have clients that don't have realistic expectations of what it is that you need to do. You often wind up in disputes between clients and contractors, and sometimes legal disputes. I've been called as an expert witness to sit in court, actually to help resolve a dispute between 2 other parties. There's a lot of boring time spent reading codes and laws and regulations that I don't really care for all that much. Sometimes, depending on deadlines, you might have to work times that you really didn't want to work in order to meet a deadline. For anybody that would want to become an engineer, somebody young coming out of high school, suggestions that I could make would be, first of all, make sure it's something that you truly want to do, because you're going to need to commit yourself to it, starting with your freshman year. A lot of people will tell you that your first 2 years of college are all the same, but in engineering, your first 2 years are not the same as the other degrees. Amongst the engineering disciplines, they're very similar, but you have to be prepared to study a lot, starting with your first semester. Don't get discouraged. A lot of the classes that you take, nobody is a natural at. You know, the people that get through it are people that work hard, and you know, if you work hard, you'll do well. Doesn't mean you're going to do well on every test or every class, but you know, you may fail something, but you get back up and study harder and get through it. It's like that for everybody in engineering. Be prepared to give up somewhat of a social life. You won't have as much extra time as other students have outside of class. A lot of your time will be spent studying to get through your classes. It gets a little bit easier your junior and senior year, not because the classes get easier. They're every bit as hard as they were before, but you kind of get into settled into a routine, and your study habits get better. They either get better or you change majors. It's hard work, but it's a good career, and I don't regret it at all. I've seen a lot of students that switch majors as they're going through college. It's just too difficult for some, and there's certainly no dishonor in doing that. That's why I think it's important that you make sure that that's what you truly want to do when you go in, so that you're not in a position to switch majors. You know, if you enjoy math and science and you're willing to commit the time to it, then it's a good career. But if you're more of a person that wants more of a social life and more hobbies and doesn't want to commit a lot to study time, then engineering's probably not the best career choice.